Hey everyone, I'm the Real Evab, and this is the 21 recap of the 100 game analysis of Guardian. Uh, we have already done a 10 run recap after episode 10. This one will not be covering those first 10 episodes. If you want, you can watch that first one. If you're new to the series, there will be spoilers in this video, so I suggest skipping this until a future date. But of course, you can watch this anytime you desire. If you were here for the 10-run recap, I said that some of the statistics in the spreadsheet here that I have open, and that will be in the description, would not be as useful as I had hoped, because my win rate was so high at that point. Stuff like the card win rates would be very hard to find anything useful there, since most of the cards would have a very high win rate. Any losses might just be coincidence, or from, like, for example, from bad play rather than them being a bad card. So the actual useful information would be harder to gather, since the comparisons of win to losses would be so small. I then said that card pick rates would be a much better metric, but it would take a lot of work. And yet, here it is. For the first 20 runs, I went through every episode, or not the videos, but in the game, if you hover over each enemy in the run history, you can see the card rewards and what you picked. So I went through all those and just entered some data into this spreadsheet here. Actually, no, this one. And then I have this sheet doing some calculations on that one. It took a lot of time, but I think I can handle doing one per episode. Well, I can handle doing one episode's worth of work at a time. Doing 20 was definitely a chore, but I think it was worth it. I'll come back to this spreadsheet later. Again, I'm sorry about doing this. My habit is to move the mouse towards the top of the screen, and I'm in full screen mode, so that automatically pulls the address bar open. But yeah, I'll come back to this in a bit. Right now, I want to go back to actually doing the recaps, and then we'll come back to this later. Also, I do have a special thing planned for this episode aside from this, but due to my time constraints, I'm going to have to release that as a separate video. Don't worry, it'll be a bonus one. You won't have to wait until Saturday to see it. It'll probably go up later today, or if I somehow run out of time, it'll go up tomorrow. So let's see. Also, you may notice that the spreadsheet is really big. Just trying to be considerate of those with smaller screens, such as on mobile. Hopefully you can all see this well. I would imagine that you'd be able to, but text is not the easiest thing to look at on a screen for everyone. Anyways, we're going to be taking a look at these 10 runs today. I'm not going to be doing like a completely in-depth recap. I'm just going to be saying extra things that I haven't, didn't really. I'm going to be making some extra observations about them, really. Extra in the sense that I've already made some observations in their own respective episodes. So yeah, let's get started here. The first thing that's coming to mind for me is how difficult it is to come up with some of these titles and even the thumbnails. Like sometimes it's starting to sort of blur together, I guess. I make an episode. It was fun to make, but finding a core identity to really highlight in the title and the thumbnail is a challenge. The very first episode after our 10-run recap, the Guardian formula breaks. It's a bit of an exaggeration. I don't really think there's a strict formula to Guardian, but this broke the norm so much. This has the highest the highest deck size in the series so far, and it blows everything else out of the water. The second highest is 33, and that came 5 episodes after. And this is when I was doing something funny with Snecko-Eye. It wasn't even Snecko-Eye until the third act, but you kind of get the idea of why the deck was so large there. Guardian Formula breaks. Let's head over to this one. We have our card list and our relic list. You can't see both at the same time, but you know. Guardian Formula breaks. This was a 38 card deck. We made use of multiple overloads. Actually, you know what? I was planning to do this in the first place. The card rewards thing, this is where all the data entry happened. And this will give us a better overview of what happened in each episode. Like, for example, you can see in this episode, our card rewards early on were not that great. Prismatic Barrier, of course, is the card that requires gems to be useful, and Evasive Protocol is not a personal favorite of mine. It's definitely more... protocols are usually just the kind of thing that you do in their own to fill a gap in your build rather than a generally useful card. 3 breaks per turn is not very impactful. 4 breaks per turn I would definitely consider a little bit more. 5 is why I take Revenge Protocol. I don't even need the strength most of the time. But yeah, so I was really only left with Piercing Hide. On floor 1, you can't really afford to skip an upfront attack or block card, as long as they, made a certain threshold. And as a common block card, Piercing Hide, 7 block, 2 temporary thorns, and a socket is not terrible. It's a nice card for Onyx. Of course, providing that you find an Onyx. It's not guaranteed or likely by any measure, but even just a block card in your starting deck, which only has 4 defends in a deck of 11 cards, can be very helpful for not leaking HP. So, in the absence of finding an attack card to take on elites, you got to take this, and it's not the worst thing. And then, of course, Amethyst and Temporal Strike. In this episode, we boss swapped into Cursed Key, so Temporal Strike was as a potential 0-cost card. And a 7 damage 1 cost even sometimes was just not worth it. Amethyst may have been worth it, but I'm willing to bet that I didn't have a campfire before the first elite. So having an unsocketed Amethyst didn't seem like the greatest thing. And Shield Charger, again, kind of leaning into that defensive playstyle. Shield Charger, I definitely did not feel as bad taking as a Piercing Hide. 10 block over 10 block every turn for 3 turns is really, really powerful, and the brace helps a lot too. So if you're forced to take a defensive card, taking an expensive defensive card especially can be really good for Gremlin Knob, because you get a lot of because even though it scales up with skills, you get a lot of value out of one card to block. Stuff like Leg Sweep and Glacier can be effective cards against Gremlin Knob too. Even though you're slowed down a little bit, it'll still mitigate plenty of damage, and you won't really lose out on any HP due to the skill played. Usually with Defends, you block 2 HP at Ascension 20 since he gains 3 strength, and then once he's vulnerable, he gains another 4 damage instead of 3, sometimes 5 if you play multiple, because of how rounding works. But stuff like Leg Sweep, Glacier, Shield Charger is one of them as well, are very efficient block, so usually that still pays off. And we did find a Walker Claw here, so that was fine. Not sure why I decided to take the Overload here. Maybe because I was feeling a little bit desperate for better attacks. Maybe it's because I undervalued the Walker Claw here. I felt that maybe with the extra energy and the more defensive playstyle, I should be looking to find better cards, or perhaps more numerous, cheaper attacks, and Overload could maybe help with that. Of course, we found Compile Package immediately on floor 6, which is likely an elite. That's usually a floor 6 thing if it's not a campfire. And then we took some other weird stuff: Suspension, Sapphire, Resilient Plate. I've only taken 1 attack during this. Compile Package, I guess, counts as another one, because it has some very effective stuff like Giga Beam. But yeah, then we pre-programmed Stasis Engine. This was definitely not your average Act 1 deck. It definitely leaned into a lot of unconventional strategies that I guess isn't really a Guardian thing specifically. Like I said, the Guardian formula breaks as a title was a bit of an exaggeration, since I don't really think there's a formula. But I guess the more accurate thing to say is that the formula for Act 1 is to mostly just take damage cards and take elites. That's true for most characters, if not all of them. So that kind of formula was very broken in this episode. And then, of course, over time, we were able to refine the deck. We got another overload in the start of Act 2. The extra draw was actually useful. Let's see. It did look like we leaned into some multi-attacks. Eventually, we got Refracted Beam upgraded and a multi-beam. It did look like we leaned into Stasis Engine. Oh, that's right. This was the Stasis Engine that I took over Construction Form for some reason. I was testing it out mostly. Then in Construction Form, we got another one here at floor 39, and then I regretted not taking the other one. Also, we didn't have as many zero-cost stuff as I thought, so Stasis Engines weren't doing as much. But yeah, I'd have to really rewatch this episode to get a good feel for this deck and how it played. I think I was mostly just happy to have that one over with, because it didn't really feel like it had any sort of rhyme or reason, even though it was working. Let's go back here for a second. Kurski into Darkstone Periapt was funny. I think if I remember correctly, I did take curses, but then removed them. Yeah, I still had 3 strikes and 4 defense. I'm willing to bet that's what happened. We did still get a bunch of relics and 2 relics in Act 1 from elites. So despite the weird strategies, we were able to make it work. Yeah. That's about all I can say about this one. There were some temp buff scaling as well with strength and dex. That's probably why I had the early resilient plate. Do I have any other debuff downs? I don't have ancient power. Oh yeah, the overload pluses, those are also okay. So yeah, that was the actual deck scaling. That makes sense. I do remember that being I do now remember that being an unconventional Guardian episode for that reason. I don't usually lean into temp buff scaling on gems. It's not really something I have anything against. It's just what naturally comes for my playstyle. So yeah, that was interesting. Moving on to the next one. The Snecko Shuriken special was not a very viewed episode, which surprised me. Very much, because it has Snecko in it, Snecko Eye specifically, but also it has a very different way, a very different deck than what you're used to on Snecko. Like usually on Snecko, whenever you get on floor 1, you just take every 2 and 3 cost card you can find, pretty much, since most of them are going to be pretty high value cards, which work well with Snecko. You get the discounts. You're able to play like 12. You're able to play like 16 damage and 12 block cards for very cheap. But this wasn't that kind of deck. We had, other than the shield chargers, which I think we got later, we had mostly just 1 cost attacks, and also the event relic. What was it called? Sharpened Fragment, which you get from the wing statue. In Downfall, you have the option to break that off. or take the entire statue rather than remove a card or get money. Since, of course, money is useless to the downfall mode characters, they use souls instead. So, also a flavor thing. So we're mostly, Shuriken was our first relic, so we leaned very much into taking just attacks that we could use to properly, man, the words are not coming. Just taking attacks to fuel that relic. We had, I think our first 2 attack cards were Charge Core, which is a 1 cost 10 damage card. Of course, there is an upside once it goes into stasis that you draw a card for every turn it's in stasis, so higher cost can still be defensible. And of course, with Sharpened Fragment, you're getting a Shiv every turn, which helps fuel the Shuriken. Yeah, we didn't end up with very many 2-cost cards other than the boss cards. We had otherwise just the Shield Chargers and the Bobble Bursts. I think we got 3 of these boss cards at a later time at the Century Stone event. Actually, I think I bought Awaken later on. I don't 100% remember. But yeah, this was definitely not a conventional deck. We did manage to get a Super Bubble Burst with Draw and Energy, and then the other Bubble Burst with Vulnerable and Negative Strength. The Garnet and the Amethyst. Those were pretty powerful cards. And of course, with Snecko being 2 cost, getting the discount with the gem multiplication was pretty nice as well. And of course, they're attacks, so they work well with Shuriken as well. But yeah, like some of my strategy was just using Clone, which is sort of like using Dual Wield on Ironclad with Snecko. You just pick a very cheap card to put into stasis, and then you get it out fast, and then you get the benefit from it very quickly. But also, cloning expensive shield chargers was also a strategy for defense. We got a Floating Orbs, which is basically a 2x Shiv. Future Plans was interesting. We upgraded Curl Up at the first campfire, which did end up working. Also, this is our first Twin Slam that wasn't upgraded. It's usually not that great on Snecko. So yeah, I felt like this deck was very interesting, since it leaned away from the usual raw value of taking high cost cards. And I think we got a bunch of crazy relics here. We got Gelatinous Cube, which helped a couple times. Baylor's Lordly Plate with the Shield Chargers got us a bunch of extra brace. Oh yeah, Mutagenic Strength. Return 1 Strength, that was also very strong. Gemstone Gun, Preserved Insect, Guria. Wing Boots, wow. Yeah, Captain's Wheel. Yeah, there were a bunch of really good relics here. Anyways, if you haven't watched that episode, go watch it. It's I found it very interesting, and I would think that you would too. But maybe, the things that interest me are not things that interest everyone. Some people go to YouTube for just the broken runs, Baylor Lord in particular likes to upload his strongest runs. I've noticed a lot of times it's with really, really strong combos, and it makes sense. People would want to watch that kind of stuff. I'm the kind of person that has experienced those kinds of runs often enough that they kind of just feel the same, or got kind of boring because you're at a point where you already know you're going to win, and it's a build that I've experienced before. Like, I either get a ton of strength and then just dump it into some multi attacks, and I'm just stomping everything, or getting a ton of defense and using Body Slam. That kind of stuff. It starts to feel very same once you get into that level of strength in your deck. So I'm a lot more into the unconventional strategies that somehow work. All right. Anyways, enough of that. Building combo damage with stasis. This was also a really interesting one. This was one that I was worried about at the start of the run because it looked like it was pretty boring. But then it quickly came together at the end of Act 2. Let's take a look at the actual card rewards here. So 13, right? Yeah. Yeah, we had a kind of slow start. We got floating orbs without any strength, which is, it's like infinite blades. It's not very good. Piercing Hide and Temporal Strike are not my favorite cards, but they do things, you know. Clone Sapphire Tourmaline. I guess I thought Clone would have to be taken just to make things work. I guess also it works with the Temporal Strike, since it provides something for Temporal Strike to give a refund for. And you know, it's pretty consistent. Stasis is like usually 2 turns, since 1-cost cards go in for 2 turns into stasis. So if I clone something, it'll provide fuel for Temporal Strike for multiple turns, rather than requiring you to draw it on the same turn. Amber was shortly after to sort of combo with the stasis thing we had going on, and that's where the combo sort of started. Planning also to lean into the stasis, recover. I actually overloaded my stasis a bit, because you have curl up for 1, planning gives you 2 more, that's 3, clone is 4, and recover is 5. You only have 3 stasis slots, so I guess I justified it by with the Amber, the bit of accelerate I had. Actually, let's take a look at this real quick. Right, the Twin Slam had the accelerate. Because I started with the Strength gem, I didn't socket it. That's the one gem that I don't socket into Twin Slam. So I was able to socket that accelerate into Twin Slam, and then later get an Energy gem, which really pulled it together. Right, at the end of Act 1, we actually got the Citrain. I was up against Ancient Construct and Laser Turret. I usually don't take Ancient Construct. Laser Turret was pretty good, but apparently I didn't think I needed it. No, actually, I just didn't have the stasis, the room in stasis for it. Is another stasis card, so, and it stays in stasis for every turn, basically, because as soon as it comes out, you put it back in for another 4 turns. So yeah, Time Sifter actually getting picked here was funny. It's still weak, but it was doing something. And then with the extra accelerate, we took a pre-program. Temporal Shield was gonna do some amazing things. You know, what do you call it? Shrug It Off on Ironclad is a pretty good card. Gain 8 block, draw 1 card. Temporal Shield is 1 less block, and it has a condition that something has to be in stasis to draw a card. But I took it because I felt like with the stasis stuff I had going on, I needed time in order to get the stuff, in order to actually make the combo work. So defense was nice. And also upgrading it later makes it draw 2 instead of 1, which is a really, really good upgrade. So I felt like that was a good investment. Where did this start to come together? Quartz, compile package, no. Stasis engine? I guess it started to come together as soon as I got the Citrain on the Twin Slam. Because then I could clone the Twin Slam, which I did multiple times, and then start comboing with all the accelerate I had. And compile package provided some nice normal value. I had a second clone, apparently, which is cool. Amber probably went into either planning or pre-program. Let's take a look at, actually. Went to Temporal Strike. I guess that makes sense. I removed the planning eventually, I guess. Yeah, that's what it looks like happened. Yeah, because I didn't need that anymore. I had enough stasis otherwise. I had the pre-program plus instead. Yeah. So yeah, that was a very interesting, that ended up being very interesting, and very fun, very rewarding. It just took a long time to play. It's one of the longer episodes. Actually, we can see that here in deck content. No, one lower. In the runs, Longest run to date, 3 hours, 37 minutes. So you're in for a ride with that, if you haven't watched it and you're going to. Honestly, a lot of these episodes being 3 hours-ish, it's just a thing. Although I have noticed that the recent episodes haven't been as long. I actually forgot to put this value in. But, you know, Dying at Niao, it's full-length episode anyway, so. That's about all I have to say about that episode. I enjoyed playing it after Act 1. Before then it felt tedious and I was wondering if it was going to be any good, but it paid off. Episode 14. Strength everywhere. Again, with the titles, it was kind of hard to come up with something. Best I could think of was, like, you know, I had multiple sources of strength. I had construction form, which I was making good use of, and I had 2 charge ups, which are the cards that go into stasis and give you 8 block and 1 strength every turn they're in stasis. It upgrades from 0 to 1 cost, which goes up. That's unusual, but it means it goes into stasis for 1 more turn, which is important. The charge ups are unusual. I don't usually take that card. I feel like it's weak. If anything, I think Charge Up and Shield Charger should maybe be switched rarities. Shield Charger is just so good. But having Charge Up on top of the not the compile package, on top of the construction form, made for some very quick strength scaling. You know, it may not seem quick because Ironclad can scale up much faster with just Demon form. You get 2 strength per turn, sometimes 3. Meanwhile, this is 1, and then you get Charge Up with 1 extra strength per turn over 2 turns. So, like, you're getting 2 strength a turn, maybe 3 for 1 turn, and then the rest of the turns you're just getting 1. But, you know, with the amount of safety that Guardian has, you can play very slow. And in fact, it sort of leans towards that kind of play style. And of course, the strength everywhere bit was because I had what was it called? Philosopher's Stone after Act 1. So, you know, both me and the enemies were gaining a bunch of strength. Let's see here. Anything interesting to say about this one? Early reroute, then Steam, Repulsor. Oh yeah, I guess I was feeling pretty confident with that Repulsor pick. Actually, let's take a look here for a second. What was the first? Okay, I was up against Ironclad then, because Bronze Gear was the first relic. So I guess, yeah, against Crystal Ray and Suspension, that didn't. Repulsor seemed like a pretty okay pick to take early. It'd be very useful against Ironclad, and usually you can afford to take 1 dead card at some point, especially with the Vent Steam. Vent Steam is was very strong. Is a very strong common. 1.5 times multiplier for multiple turns on your damage is apparently really strong. So it made me confident enough to take that. I then got a Piercing Hide, got Charge Up because I needed some sort of scaling for that fight. Multi-Beam and Refracted Beam for AoE and multi-hits was great. Roll Attack for, I think mostly just, I think the damage was still necessary, but also like the brace. Construction Form was the pick after that, after the boss. After that, we got the Charge Up Plus offered to us, which was just a natural upgrade. Then I started picking up Shield Charger. I got more stasis stuff with Time Capacitor. Another multi-beam, I think, was just for consistency's sake. I needed to be able to kill multiple enemies. Yeah, and then I just picked up a Ruby. Compile package was also giving me strength sometimes with the Ancient package and the Orbwalker package. And then we got Revenge Protocol. Yeah, just ended up being a lot of strength. Not much else to say there. We got Busted Crown. Yeah, I don't remember anything particularly interesting to say about this one. I'll just move on then. Ironclad Strikes Back. This was a very sad episode for me because I felt ready for the boss there. I felt ready for Ironclad 1. I felt like I had taken solid damage cards. What am I looking? Yeah, Orb Block as well for some extra strength. I was even confident enough to take a Gem Finder at the right before the boss. Yeah, Gem Finder was literally the floor right before the boss. I was ready to scale up for the rest of the game, get some dexterity and wards into some of these cards, the Temporal Strikes especially. And then I just lost to Ironclad because I didn't have the damage. Again, I still don't really know what I did wrong there. Some theories I came up with is that taking the Temporal Strikes, taking cheap damage cards was not the way to go. I needed to take stuff like the Walker Claw here or here. Take the expensive cards so that I could properly make use of the less draw from the status cards I'd be getting in my hand. So, you know, 1 or 0 energy, 7 damage doesn't really matter if the rest of your hand is wounds or burns or stuff like that. That's the best I could think. Someone on the Discord server for Downfall suggested that maybe I should have taken the Spiker protocol over the Orb support. And, you know, seeing how Orb support turned out, they might be right. I was mainly just taking this for extra burst damage. But, you know, also in retrospect, 8 damage and then Exhaust is not great against an opponent with 160 max HP. So I felt like that maybe was not the best decision. Maybe when I go back and replay some of these seeds later, I'll keep the pathing so I get the same card rewards. But then maybe do something like take Spiker Protocol, as was suggested. Let's see, what else? We got reroutes. Took a Shield Spikes over Walker Claw. Maybe it was because I was leaking a bunch of HP. I don't 100% remember. Maybe I needed the Brace. I don't know. Orb Block felt like an obvious pick. Stasis Field, right, there was also Refracted Beam for damage. Maybe that should have been taken over Stasis Field. Although I think Stasis Field did help. So maybe if I had taken the Walker Claw instead of Shield Spikes, I would have been okay to take the Stasis Field, because it's very useful against Ironclad, which alternates between attack and non-attack turns. Every even-numbered turn up until, like, turn 10. Turn 10 is the last time he attacks before something changes. So yeah, every even-numbered turn up to turn 10, he attacks, and then every odd-numbered turn up to turn 9 is a defensive turn. Turn 1 has a bash, but it's not very much damage, so I count that as a defensive turn. So, you know, getting Stasis Field in on the right turn, since it comes out every other turn and gives you 14 block, is great against Ironclad. Saves you a lot of HP. So you know, I'm hard pressed to say that Refracted Beam would have been the right play there. I obviously needed more damage, but I don't know if this was worth sacrificing for it. Did I even have? I didn't even have that much stasis. Maybe I could have taken the Planning over the Temporal Strike. Planning is also pretty solid against Ironclad. Being able to basically draw 2 cards. If you get a status, then it comes out immediately the next turn, and then you just don't have to deal with it. If you get a good card, then if you get a card that isn't a status, then you get it out on the turn. And, you know, having more cards in hand, having a guaranteed good card in your hand is great whenever you're dealing with a bunch of statuses. So maybe that's another point where I should have thought, because Temporal Strike, again, 0-cost card with statuses, maybe not the best idea. Ancient Power. This is weird to me because it's now happened multiple times that Ancient Power has sort of whiffed in the Ironclad fight. It happened again in a later episode, which I'll highlight once we get to it. But Ancient Power, not being drawn on the right turn, I just don't play it in the hopes of drawing back to it, and then of course we have more statuses, and then it just ends up doing nothing but taking up a slot. So could have been another time to take something else here. I think it was too late to take a Ruby since I don't think there was any campfires to socket that with. I don't think there was any other great card here. Maybe Evasive Protocol, if you want to go even further into defensive mode. I don't know. I think Ancient Power might still have been the best card here, on the off chance that it actually worked. If it was up against a better, like a even slightly better card, I probably should have taken the other one, but this was just not a great card reward. We also had Priming Shot Overload, Sapphire Piercing Hide. Maybe I could have taken a card there. I don't know. And Gem Finder, of course, we definitely should have taken a Walker Claw instead. In retrospect, of course, you know, in the moment I definitely thought I was good. So I can't really say that I should have taken the Walker Claw in that situation. But I'm talking about like future scenarios where I'm in a similar situation. I could have also thought about another reroute. I think I was slightly biased against it since I've had other runs where multiple reroutes were bad in the late game, but it could have been another solution. So especially since I only had the one reroute for Stasis. Right? Yeah, well, Stasis Field. Stasis Field, reroute, and curl up, I guess. Yeah, we'll have to replay the seed and see what happens eventually. As far as relics in that episode, we got Question Card, Letter Opener, Gremlin Horn. So, two kind of bad relics for preparing for the Act 1 boss. Question Card's not bad in general, but it obviously didn't give us anything worth taking except for the Walker Claw, which I didn't take. So, it doesn't give you any in-combat benefits by the time you get there. Letter Opener was probably our best one, but that requires playing 3 skills, which is also very hard to do in Act 1, so we just kind of whiffed. Gremlin Horn doesn't do anything in that fight either. Alright, never before seen meme build, going hard on the clickbait title, but this is actually a build that I don't think anyone has ever called a build before or done before. We got Snecko Eye at Act 2, but before then we had just a ton of roll attacks and a couple shield spikes to our name, and then we were just using the brace and the damage. And it really opened my eyes to just how strong roll attack was as a card. Because I already had a good feeling about the card in general. Like, Brace 8 is pretty powerful, and of course 16 damage is passable for 2 energy. 8 damage for 1 energy is not a great ratio, but the fact that it's efficient and you spend 2 energy on 1 card for 16 damage is a lot better than 8 damage for 1 card. You can compare it to Priming Shot, right? It has 8 damage for 1 energy, 3 brace, and also has a socket, and roll attack, of course, 16 damage for 2 energy and has a socket, and has 8 brace. It's a lot better on those multiple fronts. If you can afford the 2 energy costs in your deck, then you get the efficient 1 card draw. You get 2 extra brace over 2 priming shots. You get 6, and you even get the bonus passive sometimes if you're lucky. Which of course we actually found out if you take a bunch of roll attacks and shield spikes, you are actually going to get to use the passives because you'll be in defensive mode and they'll be using those passives instead of bracing. But yeah, basically roll attack, if you have the energy to take just a ton of roll attacks, then you've basically almost solved damage and defense with just commons, which was very eye-opening for me. I already ranked this as I think an A tier card. Maybe not, maybe I have it at B tier. B tier actually sounds right. I think maybe this would be an A tier card after seeing how this played out, because being able to lean into offense and defense so efficiently is very, very strong. We'll have to see how defensive mode unfurls later on, because it will be getting changes apparently. Well, at least that's the word on the street now. You never know how things are going to turn out in the future when it comes to card balance. Things could be tried and then just don't work, and then they find a different direction to change things. But yeah, finding the Snecko Eye was just the icing on the cake. I probably could have just won without Snecko Eye. Maybe that would have been... Actually, did I? I can't remember if I made a save file for this episode or not. I think I did. I think I made a save file at Snecko Eye. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was 14. I don't remember. But yeah, you could have taken... I think there was another energy relic there that you could have taken. Maybe Curse Key? What was the energy relic? No, I had a Curse Key at 4-0. Alright, whatever. Yeah. So, very, very unique build. Like, this is not something I would have ever anticipated, ever. And it just goes to show that, like, even if you're playing at the highest level and, you know, taking the best stuff you can and not really leaving yourself a lot of creativity rooms, per se, you're still going to get very unique builds. And, you know, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the problem solving and finding and getting to experience the cool things that happen as a result. Yeah, taking the second last stand, I guess, as a final note was a mistake, but, you know, didn't lose us the run, that's for sure. Alright, Unsocketed Gems and Unbroken Keys. This is the episode where I got to mid-Act 3 and realized I didn't have enough gold for breaking all 3 of my keys. I think I overspent a little bit at the end of Act 2, which I think there was a shop at. And then I had like just under 200 gold a few floors before the final campfire. Then I got really lucky with a gremlin wheel for an extra 100 gold, and then I was able to get that 300 by the time we got the broken keys. I also think that we didn't get to kill the merchant, which is probably why I was so close to missing. But you know, I always try to go for Act 4. It's not really a big deal if I miss. I'm always going to try my hardest to get there. Like, I'm never going to just make an excuse and go, oh, I don't feel strong enough. I'm not gonna go there. I would still count it as sort of a victory. I'll figure out exactly what to do about that later, but yeah, we did get lucky to be able to go to Act 4. Also, the Unsocketed Gems part, in the episode, we took 3 rubies, and they were just loose in the deck for a while. And I was able to do this because I had 2 Walker Claws very early on in the game. Episode 17, right? Right, we got Walker Claw. I took a Prismatic Spray? That can't be right. I think I made an error here. There's no way I would have taken a Prismatic Spray. Not that early. I don't think. Is it in the deck? Nope, not there. I probably skipped this then. I'll just make that edit for now. Okay, it fixed itself. Great. Yeah, our first 2 cards were 2 Walker Claws. We didn't really get any better attacks. Priming Shot is kind of weak for Act 1. Like, obviously, you get the chance of finding a roll attack or a shield spikes, or a Resilient Plate for that extra 8 brace to go into defensive, but, you know, 8 damage for 1 energy is not great. I'd rather take, even though the Walker Claw is slightly less efficient for damage for energy, it's still just a 1-card draw, so. What relic did I have during that? I boss swapped into Makeshift Battery, so I had an extra energy, and and a worse second draw after the shuffle. So taking expensive cards was more important here. Temporal Strike, of course, I didn't take because of energy, because I didn't need a refunding card. Yeah. Also here, I took Walker Claw over Polybeam because it's more controllable damage. It's still both scale with strength, but I felt like Walker Claw was better for what I needed. And then I took Shield Charger, Future Plans. Future Plans is always nice to get super early. It's very, very strong. Another Shield Charger, another Repulsor, yeah. Shield Charger is just strong enough that you can lean into it. You can have just 2 cards as your only damage, and I think I even said in the episode I was grateful I took both of these, because I didn't find any better damage cards by that time. I don't think I had a Ruby at the beginning either. I think my first gem, yeah, it was Thorns. I socketed it immediately, so I didn't have a loose strength gem already. This is just what I found right before the boss. And we did win that. With the future plans, I was able to get the Ruby to combo with the Walker Claws on the right turn, so that was great. Maybe also with the Twin Slam. Anyways, we got Onyx as well, which is great. I think I landed the Twin Slam as well, right? Yeah, debuff down, there it is. So I was able to permanently scale up strength. The permanent Thorns was just kind of, it's just there. Getting 1 or 2 Thorns is not very effective, unfortunately. Got our second Ruby here, a couple floors after. We finally picked up a Polybeam. Got an Ancient Power, which you could argue is also like an unsocketed gem, but that made us very powerful. I think sometimes it even helped us with Shield Chargers later. I might be misremembering. Yeah, we got another Ruby, got Floating Orbs. Those Rubies stayed unsocketed for a few floors until... Didn't we get... I thought we got an Exploit Gems from somewhere. It was probably from a Transform event. Or just some kind of event, because I don't see it here. But yeah, after we got the Vent Steam... Where's the Vent Steam? We did get a Vent Steam, right? Where is it? I might have to take another look at this episode. I seem to be missing cards. Oh well. Anyways, we got a Vent Steam and an Exploit Gems we were able to put those gems into. So they didn't stay unsocketed all game, but we were able to get away with it. I was originally planning to maybe use the Pick of Rhapsody, which we picked up at some point, and then maybe use those unsocketed gems, but the opportunity never arose because you have to wait for so long for those to be useful. You have to spend a campfire mining them, then they have to stay loose in the deck until your next campfire. And of course, you don't know what gems you're getting either, so picking up the guaranteed rubies that we ended up finding was definitely a lot better, considering all the multi-attacks that we ended up with in the deck. This roll attack, I think, is literally just for Brace. Unless I made another error here. Maybe I didn't take it. Oh well. Anyways, that was another fun one. I liked having the rubies just floating in the deck for a bit, then getting to use them with, then getting to socket them afterwards and use the Walker Claws, which we upgraded. And then, of course, breaking the keys, that was a clutch moment. Oh yeah, this was also the one where we had a Flawed and Gelatinous Cube, and the makeshift battery, of course. Gelatinous Cube being the relic that basically gives you 1 sack of Evolve from Ironclad at the start of combat. You draw 1 card for every status you draw. This is a downfall relic, probably because most of the bosses don't give you statuses anymore. Ironclad and Defect still do. Ironclad definitely Defect a little bit with the Voids. But you don't have... But in the base game, you have both Slime Boss and Hexaghost giving plenty of statuses, and that's a 2/3 chance. Meanwhile, in Downfall, it's a 2/5 chance. And then in Act 3, you don't have any statuses at all. Meanwhile, in the base game, you have Slimes from Time Eater, you have Dazes from Donu Deka, and then in Phase 2, Awakened 1, you get the occasional Void. So, Gelatinous Cube isn't as broken as it would be in the base game. Oh yeah, also Niao. Niao and the Act 4 elites don't give statuses anymore, they give curses. So, yeah, it's a lot less power. That's probably why they put it into a relic. Of course, it's reasonable to just assume it was just done for flavor purposes, but obviously, like, Evolve is very strong on Ironclad, and even that's without its own status generation. Sometimes you just take cards to solve specific fights. But it's very strong even at base, so, the fact that it works in Downfall makes a lot of sense. And we were able to lean into it with Makeshift Battery and the Flawed making extra statuses for us. You don't go positive with Gelatinous Cube, you just draw whatever you would have drawn without the statuses. So we were able to afford taking those, and then we were able to afford the downsides of those. And we kept the Flawed over strikes. We would just exhaust some bad cards and then treat them like they were gone, like they were actually gone. Like if I had a Haunted instead. It did give us voids very often, I remember, the Flawed did, but we usually didn't draw back to them fast enough in order for it to be a problem, which was fortunate. Anyways, this was an episode where we swapped into Empty Cage, and then I decided to maybe go for a small deck strategy, and I took some very interesting cards in Act 1 that should not have worked. Resilient Plate I don't think was a bad choice here. Actually, what did I have as my... Right, Empty Cage. Right, I just said that. So 3 energy, right? So the Crystal Ray was not even in consideration. Resilient Plate was fine. Even the Brace 8 and no temporary buffs, it's still okay. But then I started leaning into late game stuff immediately. I took a Shield Charger over a Roll Attack and a Charge Core, which I think should have maybe been a bit more of a consideration in retrospect. With the small deck thing, I was definitely leaning into the late game stuff with Shield Charger, but I should have been focusing a lot more in the early game, and these both are just as valid. Shield Charger is still strong, of course, but Roll Attack and Charge Core being attacks for Act 1 elites was very important. And then I took a Roll Attack because I needed some kind of damage. And this is where the regrets started to come in. I skipped all 3 of these. Didn't even take Event Steam, which I usually do. Didn't take a Planning, which I usually do. It's also a weird choice, but I guess I was going really hard into the late game stuff. These would have been great takes for Act 1 if I had just not decided to commit to a small deck strategy out of the gate. It's a lesson there. Don't commit to a strategy before you started the game. And in general, that's kind of a good advice anyways. Like, in order to win Slay the Spire, most of the time, you can't just go into a run deciding what kind of build you're going to do. You can't decide you're going to do a poison build on Silent. You could get lucky and actually get it, but a lot of times you just have to take what you're offered. Which is basically the entire philosophy I have to go into A20 with. We took another Shield Charger. We skipped here. Took another Resilient Plate. Man, we went hard into the Brace. And somehow we won that boss fight. I don't remember what the boss was. I think we bought a Body Slam at the shop and then we fought Defect. Yeah, that was what happened. Because I got a really lucky draw off of a card on a reshuffle and drew the Body Slam twice when I had a ton of block, and that's how we won before dying. Yeah, we had no business winning that. I might come back to this seed. I did lose technically in Act 4. I think any seed that loses in Act 4 I'm probably not going to come back to, because, I count that as being close enough to not warrant replaying. But in this case, I screwed up the Act 1 so much that I might come back anyways. We got Gem Cannon, and then the deck started to really come together. We were able to make use of the Body Slam a lot more easily. We were definitely not small deck Strack anymore. How big did it get at the end? 18? 27 card deck, which is pretty average for Guardian. Where is it? Here it is. Yeah, we did eventually take an actual event steam. We got Bobble Burst. We took some gems, it looks like. Spheric Shield. Yeah. And a late game Overload. Probably a Stasis of some kind here, but I don't remember. Anyways, we lost in the Niao fight because I let too many defends go from Haunted. Haunted adding Ethereal to the cards. Because, I was trying to go for a smaller deck. Even at the end of the game, usually letting cards exhaust is perfectly fine. Because then you can draw it through your deck more efficiently. But that was a mistake because I was spending the entire game scaling up my dexterity, and my defends were actually important pieces of my build. And then I couldn't block on a turn I needed to, and I died. So, very tragic misplay. Very poetic, I guess, that I tried to go for small deck strategies beginning and end of the game and got punished for it eventually. So, Alright, number 19. The long-awaited, right, this was the Busted Crown. Not a lot to look at here. I was definitely expecting more of a challenge in this episode, but if you take a look at a couple things here, Emerald was a speculative pick, which you kind of have to do with Busted Crown, and I did eventually end up liking that pick, so that was cool. We got Multi-Beam Walker Claw right out of the gate, Piercing Hide Roll Attack. We can go into defensive mode in the first cycle. It got very... Suddenly, the game got very easy. I even got a rare in Act 1. That's very unusual with Busted Crown. Usually you have to spend so many card rewards building up your rare chance after finding a bunch of commons, which I guess I did. I found Emerald, Walker Claw, Piercing Head, Roll Attack. 4 commons. That boosted the rare chance up to 2% in hallway fights and 7% in elites. And I hit, I think 12 was an elite. Let's see. 12, yeah, Mercury Hourglass. Okay, that was an elite. So yeah, I got the 7%. Very, very lucky. And then, also from that elite, got Singing Bowl with Busted Crown. So I got a lot of use out of it. And then later on, we got Apparitions. What else did we get? We got another compile package. Yeah, we had 2 compile packages, 3 apparitions, and then we bought Strange Spoon. Where did we get that, by the way? Strange Spoon. 39, so right after the Act 2 boss, which I think actually saved us. Actually, no, I don't remember. I feel like our deck was already strong enough. It's just really put it over the edge. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed, honestly. I was hoping for a bit more of a challenge with the Busted Crown, and instead I got handed a crazy run instead. It was still entertaining. Like I said earlier, that sometimes really strong runs just kind of meh, but this was really funny how everything worked out. This is the first time I used 2 compile packages with Strange Spoon. I've done it with 1 before, but this got really silly. I almost got too caught up in the scaling with the Ancients package late in the game, because I think I would keep getting Ancient Powers and Dexterity and Thorns and Strength from other cards with the Ancient Construct cards that came with the package, and just kept playing those and kept scaling up. I got like somewhere like around 15 to 20 Strength and a bunch of, and a way too much Dex as well, and Niao was scaling up and I wasn't doing any damage, and I just had to end it. So yeah, very, I don't even know how to describe that. It was strange, it was fun, it was humorous how everything worked out. I bought a hand drill. That was the thing. It's a lot better in Downfall. Uh, every boss blocks, including Meow, so it had a use. Is that it? Did I also, no, what was the episode I took a bunch of curses? Did I skip over that? Right, the Never Before Seen meme build. I got Duvu Doll at the end of the game, and of course I had Curse Key at the beginning, so I just started taking the late game, I just started taking chests, and then Duvu Doll started giving me a lot of strength. So that was even more meme, on top of the meme. Almost forgot that, man. That really, like, everything that happened in that episode really made that episode. Alright, and our final one, in the recap. Sorry. The wrist blade, the early wrist blade, wasn't as run defining as I was hoping for, because I found a body slam on the first floor of Act 2. So that was, again, a little disappointing. Sometimes whenever you get some crazy broken stuff and you were hoping to do some other stuff with your deck, it kind of is disappointing. But I think it was still relevant. We got wrist blade from the Minor League Arena event, which is a Downfall exclusive that gives you the option to fight special fights in exchange for relics on the base game characters. Like, for example, you can fight a Gremlin Knob, I believe, for Champion Belt. You can fight Centurion and Mystic in Act 1 for Cloak Clasp. By the way, in Act 1, that's actually kind of a difficult fight. Like, harder than an Act 1 hard pool. So, actually challenging. Or you can fight the duo slavers that you find in the Coliseum event in Act 2. Just those two for Wristblade. And I was lacking on damage a bit, so I decided to go for the Wristblade against Ironclad. I usually go for Cloak Clasp, and I think most people do because the defense is nice. And most generally useful, but I had some defense already, I think maybe a shield charger. Let's see, I had roll attack, recover, right, I had 2 recovers, that's why I didn't do it. 2 recovers and of course roll attack give me plenty of brace to go into defensive, and of course 2 common block cards that I upgraded both for 8 blocks, so I didn't really need the extra block from Cloak Clasp, so I went for the damage. And of course, having 2 recovers meant that I could put any attack I wanted into stasis, and by the time it came out, it would cost 0. So 0 cost attacks plus Wristblade equals profit. You get 4 extra damage on every hit. So stuff like Walker Claw and Refracted Beam, which I did end up finding a bit later. I think I got Walker Claw. I don't remember if I got that before or after. Let me take a look. Wristblade was floor 9, so that was before both of them. I figured out that I could take that strategy, and then found the Walker Claw and Refracted Beam right after finding the Wristblade. So leaned into that. That, I think, single-handedly won me the Ironclad 1 fight, which I was definitely thinking I was going to have a lot harder time with, but apparently, taking the expensive cards, having Stasis with Recover. Recover is really nice against Ironclad. You can pick any card you want. It means you're guaranteed to get a good card rather than something like Planning and having a bad card in Stasis. Bad card being statuses. So yeah, we did so much damage. I was still kind of worried at floor 15. I took an Ancient Power over the Citrine. I really wish I had taken the Citrine because the Citrine had so much potential. And the Ancient Power, again, sort of just whiffed that fight. I used it at the end to finish the fight, but I didn't really need to. I had so much damage already. Citrine would have gone into maybe... I don't remember. It would have done something awesome. So that made me sad. But that was not the end of the interesting stuff, because even though we got Body Slam, I just had to decide between Stasis Field and Revenge Protocol. Compile Package, I felt like I already had enough raw value in my deck that I didn't need to add more especially not one that was semi-random. So I leaned into defensive stuff, and I had to choose between these two, which were both good. I decided to take Stasis Field for extra front load, especially against Act 2. You don't really want to take something that has setup. Not that many things that have setup because of fights like Avocado, the Shelled Parasite, I mean. Uh, Snake Plant both come to mind. Both hit very hard on turn 1, so you want your front load rather than your scaling. And then I found Guardian Gear, which puts you in defensive for 3 turns, so Revenge Protocol would have been perfectly fine and even beneficial. You would have gotten 2 strength for 3 turns, plus you would have gotten extra brace. And again, Guardian Gear doesn't increase your brace count for that 3 turns of defensive mode. So I would be able to go back into defensive mode very easily with the Revenge Protocol. And then at the end of Act 2, we got the same 2 cards. So I could have taken 2 Revenge Protocols. And then we got one on floor 43. So I could have had 3 Revenge Protocols, 15 brace a turn, and then maybe even some other protocol. Was there another protocol somewhere in this? I don't see it, actually. I guess there was one here, Spire Protocol. Anyways, that's not... I don't know if I would have taken it anyways. But yeah, I ended up taking double Stasis Field instead. And it worked. I took it mostly because I was... well, I obviously I took this first one because I needed the front load. I already explained that. But I also took the second one... I also took this one and the second one as like a learning opportunity. Sometimes whenever I have trouble evaluating a card, but I see an opportunity to take it, I'll prioritize doing that a lot more in order to invest in later runs. If I take it in a run, I will be doing it to learn something important about whether or not that's possible, learning its strength level, learning the situations in which it's useful and the situations in which it's not. And I felt like I learned something this run about Stasis Field. I don't still have a good grasp on its power level, but I do know that it was useful. Also, I upgraded this one and managed to get it into Bottled Anomaly, which made it permanently cost 0, starting on turn and it gives you to you on turn 3. And of course, Stasis Field usually costs 1, which means it comes out every other turn from Stasis. But it costing 0 from Bottled Anomaly permanently means that it comes out of Stasis immediately. So I'm getting 20 block per turn, and that's before Dexterity of any kind. So yeah. And then we even did more stuff with Stasis. This is another interesting part. I had a time capacitor, and I had Accelerate of some kind. I don't see it here, but I had both. I had both time capacitor and Accelerate, which we usually don't go together. Usually with more stasis slots, you can just fill them and then wait for stuff to come out, because you're going to get a bunch of stuff out at the same time, which means that you have a lot of free slots, and Accelerate doesn't help that at all because it helps empty your slots. So you have an imbalance. You have all these empty slots that you might not be able to fill thanks to Accelerate, and if you're not filling the slots, you're not making use of the slots properly. But we did. I think the Stasis Fields helped a lot. I think those take a lot of credit. Since those go back immediately into stasis, they permanently take up 2 stasis slots. But even the 4 remaining slots, since the time capacitor was eventually upgraded, even the 4 remaining slots got filled very easily. We had the pre-program plus the suspension. We had the curl up, of course. Do we have anything else? I don't see it, but it looks like we had enough. So we made use of all the slots. We made use of the Accelerate. Can I even find it where the Accelerate was? Bobble Burst. We got Accelerate somewhere along the line. Amber? Ah, right, we got it right after Refracted Beam. Because I had 2 recovers already. I took it for that. Okay. So yeah, where did that go into? Went to Bobble Burst. Okay, so we had a triple Accelerate card. Yeah. But it worked out. And you know, this run just kind of was very strong with the Body Slam. I think we were doing... Yeah, we maxed out Niao's damage every turn that we could. We were blocking for just way too much every turn with these stasis fields, and defensive mode that we went into sometimes. Guardian gear, of course, helped a lot with that. And then with body slam and the Garnet giving us vulnerable, we were doing 200 damage basically every time we drew the body slam. And with stasis, we could get it out every turn because it eventually got upgraded by the one shop relic, the barbell. Hitting it randomly with an upgrade basically immediately after we took it. That was a funny coincidence. So it comes out after one turn of stasis since it costs 0. So we got it back immediately every turn. Yeah. I hear that the change to body slam is going to make it rare and 2 cost, so that'll be interesting. I think it's warranted. I don't know if it's too much or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't too much. One of the people who is on the balancing team said specifically that one of the big problems of body slam is that you can get it back from stasis so easily since it's so cheap. It's basically a copy of Ironclad's body slam, except it's uncommon. So it's 1 cost and then goes to 0 cost. So yeah, fixing that specifically with stasis is important. So I'm actually looking forward to that nerf because, like I said, I take what I need in order to win, and I like to be able to experience the game and whatever build it gives me, because the uniqueness of every build is still very enjoyable, even if it's not something that I'm necessarily choosing to make. I think my own playstyle plays a very important role in the builds that end up happening. So like not every Guardian player that plays at A20 is going to follow the exact same rules, especially not and even not successful ones, of course. That's what I was trying to say. Successful Guardian players at A20 are not all going to have the same builds. Their own personal experiences are going to push them towards certain things over others, and they will still succeed. So, you know, following what you think is the best play can maybe feel forced, but it's also not, because you're yourself and you play the way that you play. But anyways, having the body slam nerfed will make it so that the times where I find the body slam maybe more situational, they'll happen less often, so that leaves room for more interesting things to happen. And I think even though the body slam got really broken this run, I was surprised with how much block I was getting. I would have liked to lean more into the wrist blade stuff. The wrist blade play really inspired. It got me excited for the kinds of things that I could unlock in the rest of the run, making more use of stasis and using that for damage specifically. I didn't really get to as much. I think the wrist blade was still relevant for most of the run. It got overshadowed by the body slam, but I think it was still doing a decent amount of damage with the Walker Claw and Refracted Beam. So, you know, wasn't a total loss. And of course, body slam being upgraded, it got 4 more damage. Yay! That's about all I can. That's about the only thing good I can say about body slam there. Hang on a second. There we go. All right, that's that. That's our past 10 runs. Real quick overview. We had the temp buff scaling with big deck strats. We had cheap attacks with Shuriken on Snecko. We had combo damage with Stasis. This really just sums up very well. Doing stuff with Clone on Twin Slam, which had an Accelerate and an Energy Gem in it. Being able to combo those together was very effective. This was just a bunch of strength. this didn't win. This was a roll attack build. This was more strength, I think. Right. This was the Walker Claws and Rubies, and looks like Twin Slam construction form. Yeah. It did. Yeah, this is another strength build. The uniqueness, of course, came from how the beginning of the game started, but ultimately it did end up just being another strength thing. This was Body Slam deck. What was this again? This was Strange Spoon with Apparitions Compile Package. That's basically its own thing. Just like the roll attack, it's its own thing. And then this was another. This is another Body Slam deck. So I was doing this just to highlight the different kinds of builds, just like we did in the first 10. The first 10 run recap. It does look like there are a couple builds that are going to come back up multiple times during the series. Mainly the strength build and the body slam builds. Those are very, very straightforward and common enough to come up frequently. I think those are major weaknesses of the builds. You may notice over the series that, at least with the way I play, strength builds happen a lot more often than Thorns builds, and those are somewhat comparable because of the gems and the temp buff scaling and all that. And of course, Guardian, being Guardian, has a mild Thorns theme, or even a somewhat even minor or major theme, depending on your definition. And yet the strength is what's stronger most of the time. Thorns are really hard to make work because you need a ton of them in order to actually kill something and rely on that damage. Because if you think about it, if you have like 20 Thorns and then the opponent is only attacking for one time every turn, you're only doing 20 damage a turn, and that's not the kind of level you need to be at in the late game. You need to be doing, I think Jorv's had a metric for this. I think you're doing 50 damage in 2 turns. In Act 3, I think that's the metric. I think that's the threshold that he suggests. Don't quote me on that. But it's somewhere around that area, and that is not what 20 Thorns can do, unless there's a multi-attack involved. You might be thinking about Niao with this multi-attack bringing up. After all, it's the last fight of the game. But Niao, even though she has a 3 times attack, it only happens once every 3 turns. So you need to take into account all the turns. You have a buff turn or the debuff turn, depending on which cycle you're on. Then a single attack, then a triple attack. So every 4 turns you're getting... No, sorry, every 3 turns you're getting 4 hits. So you're doing 80 damage every 3 turns. And, she's healing, too, from her God of Life passive, which is, of course, the opposite of Beat of Death. She heals for 3 every time you play a card. So, very, very slow damage. Which pairs well with what Guardian does. It's very defensive, but you can't always rely on such a defensive deck. For starters, Niao has her hero passes as well. Ironclad alone makes it so that you can't stall forever. Watcher makes it risky. Hermit makes extra curses in the draw, which can screw with whatever strategy you're doing. A lot of the times, Thorns are not... it's really hard to get permanent Thorns on your character. It's a lot easier to get temporary ones with Tourmaline. And usually that's fine. You can get cards... As long as you're able to get the cards on the right turn, the turn they're doing a multi-attack, then it's okay. And that's usually the strategy you go for. But with Hermit, it's a lot harder to get that consistency since the curses are being added to your drop pile. And then there's Defect, which gives Niao buffer. 2 buffers every time she buffs. So if you don't have consistent ways to get attack damage, you're not going to be able to get rid of those buffers before she attacks. So yeah, a lot of problems with Thorns, and strength just comes up so often. I'm hoping to see in the future changes that will fix this issue. Also, when it comes to strength builds, I think Ironclad can be forgiven for this, but on Guardian, they're just really straightforward. And I think this happens a lot on characters that build strength of any kind. You just put a bunch of multi-attacks into their card pool, and then all you have to do is just build strength, take the multi-attacks, and then that's your damage engine. It's very straightforward, and it works for Ironclad. Like I said, you can forgive him for that because he's the first character of the game. You know, if you want a simpler deck building experience, you go with him, which is very fine, I think. But when it comes to modded characters, you do need some level of uniqueness. Part of the uniqueness, of course, is from temporary buffs, which come from Ruby, Ancient Power. I think those are the only two sources of temporary strength. That's going to be changed. The balance team plans to add more sources of temporary buffs to maybe make it feel more, to maybe buff that aspect of Guardian and to make it feel more unique. But even so, Guardian just has several direct sources of strength. Several? That might be an exaggeration. A couple direct sources of strength. Charge Up, Construction Form are the two that come to mind right now. There might be a third, I think. Orb Walk, that's right. Orb Walk. I almost always forget that one. But Orb Walk being a power, or something that you can put into stasis to scale your strength more. Yeah, those direct ways to gain strength just kind of make it very, I want to say boring even. It's kind of boring to build strength so directly and then just dump it into multi-attacks. I already have that experience in Ironclad. I think it fits better with that character to begin with. On Guardian, it just kind of starts feeling the same. Especially because, like, the multi-attacks he has even feel kind of similar. It has Walker Claw, Refracted Beam. I know there's one more. I think there's one more 2-cost. I don't remember. And then there's Polybeam, which is like Sword Boomerang. And then there's Floating Orbs, which is just way too powerful. I don't know. It just doesn't feel good enough. So Body Slam, like I said, Body Slam decks, that's getting fixed. So we'll see those less often, and those being kind of monotonous. That'll be much reduced. It'll start to feel more unique whenever it actually happens, especially since you'll actually have to struggle to make it happen if Body Slam really does end up being 2-cost. But I'm really hoping that something similar happens for Strength, because it's getting kind of boring. Alright, now let's move on to pick rates here. So I was hoping to do a little bit more statistical analysis in these, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. Like, for example, this first card, Charge Core, 9 taken, 46 offered. That's a sample, the sample probability, 19.57%. I was hoping to do some calculation in the spreadsheet that would show like the margin of error, like a 95% likelihood of being correct within this margin, like plus or minus 5%. That might be a bit low for the sample size, but in theory, like plus or minus 5%, that gives you a 95% chance of the true pick rate. My true pick rate inside that range. But it turns out that's a lot harder to Google than I thought. I did plenty of research. I found several things that were similar to what I wanted, but ultimately didn't work for this. So we're just going to have to deal with this for now. Maybe I'll eventually figure out how to do this. Shouldn't be too hard. Once I find the formula, I just copy and paste it down every floor. I play too much Slay the Spire. Sorry. But yeah, real quick, just want to highlight what this spreadsheet looks like. You can see a couple different colors. Like as you go down, it gets more orange, and the second row or the second column, and at the top it gets more blue. More blue means that there were more offered, and therefore there is a higher there's a higher confidence in this pick rate. The higher the sample size, the more accurate the pick rate will be on average. The highest sample size, of course, we have is roll attack. So about 25% pick rate on roll attack seems about correct. And meanwhile, we have upgraded cards at the bottom that sometimes get offered in card rewards that have much lower offer rates. So those often, these have very low confidence. But you know, sometimes that doesn't matter for the upgraded cards, specifically because they're upgraded. You are more willing to take them more often, so stuff with high pick rates is more likely to be actually correct. Like Sphere Shield Plus especially. I wouldn't be surprised if this had a 100% pick rate by the end of the series. But yeah, if there are any colorblind people in the audience, the higher pick rates you may have noticed have a slightly darker color, and the lower pick rates are maybe a bit lighter. I'm not sure how dark this looks, but I'm assuming that if both ends look darker, that's still fine, because it still highlights the extremes, high pick rates or low pick rates. Offer rates. Pick rates are similar. We have red for the bottom and green for the top, which gets really intense down here. I'm not sure, maybe I'll change this. Maybe I'll change the upper bound to something like 50%, since we have some things that are just going to be 100%, like especially down at the bottom here. But if you are colorblind, the more intense colors are the more extremes. That's 0% and 100%. Actually, let me just fix this right now. Let's go here. Do this. That looks a bit better. Okay, so let me just discuss this a little bit. In a vacuum, a card reward will have 4 options, right? You get 3 cards, and then you get a skip. So in theory, if there were no other variables, then a healthy pick rate would be around 25%. Obviously, that's not going to be the case completely, because not only will there sometimes be variables to how many cards are in a card reward, like with Question Card or Busted Crown, there will also be variances to how good a card is, both in general and also from rarity. Like, rare cards will have much higher pick rates than other cards. But I think it should hover around 33%. So let me try doing this. Okay, that highlights things a lot better, I think. So yeah, about 20% pick rate on Charge Core is slightly green. Maybe that's a little bit low. Actually, let's just go back to 25% and 50%. Because I want the healthy pick rate to be around that middle color, which is gray. So like roll attack, this makes sense to be in this range. I don't know, maybe I'll change it, maybe I'll adjust this a bit more to be more indicative of what I actually think of the cards. Like, I don't think Charge Core is bad. Maybe I should reconsider that. It's a common attack, which makes it really good in Act 1, which I have noticed I have a bias towards Act 1 cards. Probably because that's where Guardian is weakest, but in Act 2 and Act 3, Charge Core is not very good. You don't want to be spending energy on a common attack. The extra draw is nice, but I don't know if it's worth taking most of the time. It's plus, like, I've talked about like how card draw functions before, but as a net +1 draw, it just doesn't seem good enough in the later game. So maybe this is actually correct. But meanwhile, anything over 50% is kind of just the same color as Everything else, anything above this maximum is just going to be the same color as 50%. So this is the same, this is the same. The more nuanced colors in the middle are going to be more accurate. Anyways, let's just go into this real quick. Obviously, as you can maybe see, the highest offered values are at the very top, as are common cards. They're offered the most often. So they're going to have the highest confidence of being accurate with the pick rate. A couple outliers here I'm noticing: Shield Charger and Aquamarine being my highest picked common cards by a large margin, 45.71%. Shield Charger I put as an A tier. I may have to move it up to S tier after this series. It's really strong. Like, you don't get any upfront value from it, but as soon as it's into stasis, you get 10 block every turn for 3 turns, plus brace. That's insane. Can you believe that this card used to have energy attached to it per turn as well? Back when I started Guardian, that's what happened. There was energy attached to it, and I'm like, is this card good? Like, usually, like when I'm learning a new character, sometimes it's hard for me to evaluate whether a card is good or not. I usually try to follow the formula, but I don't really have a good grasp on which cards are the best, which cards are good and what situations. So I'm like, this looks good. Like, I think I can make use of it. Is the future turn aspect of it the nerf? And apparently it was OP as heck. And I was taking it every time I saw it, even though I was apprehensive about it every time. It just didn't seem like a bad card, and apparently I was right. Maybe I should have more confidence in myself whenever it comes to those things, huh? But even now, Shield Charger still giving 10 block a turn for 3 turns is insane. It gives you so much safety. You sacrifice 1 turn to put it into play, and 1 card draw. It's worth it. It's worth it so much of the time. It's like a 1 card. It's a 1 card block engine in so many situations. And all you have to do in order to prepare for late game bosses is just add a few more copies. Like, you could legitimately just add a ton of Shield Chargers to your deck and make that your entire block system. You're eventually going to run out, but in theory, the rest of your deck is good enough, offensive enough, and synergistic enough to just kill the boss before you run out. Kind of corruption strats, you know. So yeah, that's why this has such a high pick rate. It's almost 50%. This is way too high. This card needs nerfed. Similar to what I said about Body Slam, I have felt like this card has just kind of dominated some of my play. Like, a lot of more interesting decks have suddenly been like, oh, okay, I'm perfectly fine now once I find a Shield Charger or 2, especially when I find 2. There have been multiple decks, I think, in this series where I find 2 Shield Chargers at like the second half of Act 3 or beyond, and then that just solves my block for the rest of the game. So yeah. Aquamarine, I've actually talked about this in my tier list video and the 10 running recap. But I take this very often because because it has a couple of very, very strong properties. One is that you can socket it into basically any card and it's good. And most of the socket cards are actually common attacks. So they benefit very, very much from having a ward in them. The ward makes those cards a lot more safe to have in the deck, since if you're getting attacked, you don't really want attacks in hand to block. It's not going to work. Attacks don't block unless you kill. So having an Aquamarine in them make them very much safer. So you're able to still do damage and have whatever else utility is attached to the card while still being safe. And of course, Aquamarines can help you lean into dexterity strategies, which are rare but not unheard of. It's what makes Gem Finders such an interesting card. It's very hard to evaluate that card on a surface level, but the first time I was able to make use of it properly was actually as a block engine. Over time, I would take Aquamarines and a couple Emeralds and then use those as my entire block engine. So yeah, that's very interesting use of the card. Uh, and you know, Aquamarine being a common, uh, it's just too useful in too many situations. The only reason this pick rate is not as high as Shield Charger is because I often don't have very many gem sockets in my cards to begin with. Like I said, a lot of them are common attacks, so those are the kind of cards that you take when you have to, not because you want to. So if I don't want to, I don't end up with a lot of them most of the time. I think all of these things are going to be fixed eventually. I know Aquamarine specifically is going to be moved to uncommon. Well, at least that's what I heard last. Again, none of this is set in stone. They could have, the people balancing could always test things and find out they don't work. So I take that back. I don't know for a fact, but I do know that it is getting nerfed in some way. Roll Attack and Ruby. It's interesting that they're both 25%. Roll Attack is definitely another early game card. Again, kind of biased towards it because of early game stuff. Again, weakest part of the game for Guardian. But it's interesting that I take it so much. Probably because I take it every time I see it in Act 1. I think it's probably one of the strongest common attacks that Guardian has. And I've even taken it a couple times in late game, as we saw. The extra brace value can still be very useful, and if I'm lacking on damage, then, you know, it's pretty solid. 16 damage, 2 energy. Like I said, very efficient. Ruby, of course, is just there because, like, strength builds are so common, and the gem slots are a little bit uncommon, so, you know, 25% pick rate, again, makes sense, adjusting for both those things. Now, Crystal Ray. It's been offered to me 40 times and I've taken it 0. This card, I'm hoping is getting buffed. There was talk about it getting buffed by the dev team. Exactly how is a different story. I don't know, but it speaks volumes that I've never taken this card. It's in this series at least. I've taken it a couple times before. I've actually said before in other episodes that I've taken it like 2 times in my entire career, or rather in 2 runs, and it was only good in one of them. It was really bad in others. Let's see, what else has a bad pick rate? Incinerate. I've only taken that 2 times. Have I even taken it 2 times? I don't know. Again, I'm going to have to go back through these card rewards and double check to make sure that I did them correctly. Sorry about that. Yeah. More weak cards, Priming Shot. Doesn't compare really to Roll Attack. Doesn't have the efficiency. It's 8 damage for 1 energy. It's not very great. 3 braces. 3 braces is below a threshold. 3 braces on any card is pretty much inconsequential unless you have an 8 brace card specifically. So, yeah. Reroutes, I may be undervaluing. I think it's okay. Temporal Shield, I usually don't take common block cards, so that makes sense. Temporal Strike, I don't have a lot of opportunities to take that and for it to be good because I boss swap and sometimes have 4 energy. I've actually taken Piercing Hide more than I've taken Temporal Shield. You know, maybe I should take more Temporal Shields. Because, like, the card draw, I think I undervalue the card draw. But then again, it's hard for me to evaluate. Vent Steam is lower than I thought it would be. That's all I have to say about that. And I've taken 1 Tourmaline ever. Yeah. Tourmaline, again, Thorns builds are really, really hard to make work. So I hope that gets changed. Anyways, uncommon cards. Ancient Power is really high on the pick rate here. Which makes sense. You know, it's kind of weird to me because 4 temporary strength and dexterity doesn't necessarily seem like a great card to have on its own. Like, it's like adding a super flex and then a defensive flex. But, you know, like having the option to have a strength dump or a dex dump or both in the same turn is actually pretty strong. Even though it does nothing by itself, the cards that it's able to buff actually does quite a bit. I did hear that there were plans to change this card as well, so we'll have to see what happens there. Protocol is low pick rate, of course. Body Slam being around 25% is deceptive, I think. I've only been offered it 11 times. Interesting. I have this as an S tier card, which I've explained before, but I'll say it again. I don't always take this card when I see it. I don't think that's a reason why it shouldn't be S tier, though. Because if you need it and it shows up, you can pretty much always take it. You can take it in the early game as a damage card, and then build into it super easily. And of course, if you have another damage system already, you don't need it. But if you don't have a damage system, as soon as you take it, you have a way to win. Because Guardian has so many ways to scale up the block. So just the fact that it can be there when you need it to be makes it S tier. And even though the pick rate doesn't necessarily reflect that, it doesn't have to. Charge Up, again, both of these picks were in one episode. The rest of them I just ignored. Clone, I've actually taken more than I thought I would, huh? This is a card I've discussed before being really situational. Because it does nothing the turn you play it, or sometimes even the next couple turns. It has a really high ceiling for power, which is sometimes needed. Sometimes you need extra oomph to actually beat elites or bosses, but it makes your power floor worse. It makes your turns a little more inconsistent if you need to block or kill a minion of some kind, or just fight hallway fights. Emergency and Evasive Protocol, 0% pick rate. This is interesting. I feel like Emergency's very situational, because you need expensive cards in Stasis for it to be really good. Or maybe I'm undervaluing it. Maybe 1 or 2 Accelerate is perfectly fine at 0 cost. I don't know. I think the next time I'm given any kind of build that might like Accelerate, maybe I'll consider this a little bit more. At worst, it's an Amber, which is admittedly pretty weak, but you know, the fact that it guarantees that something that's coming out of Stasis maybe is worth it. Maybe it makes it better than an Amber, even at its worst. I'll have to think about that. I probably undervalue this card. I've taken the upgraded version. That's at the bottom of the thing here. Yeah, I've taken that twice out of the 3 times it's been offered. Not very indicative of anything. I just that I've taken it. Floating Orbs, very high. Future Plans, very high. This is probably more of a correlation thing, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's interesting that they both have similar pick rates. Maybe because I don't always take Future Plans. Like, I think they're both very strong, but I don't take more than 1 Future Plans, and if I already have Stasis, I don't really have to take Future Plans. And similarly with Floating Orbs, I actually need Strength in order for it to be good. So I guess, like, they are situational, but they're really good in those situations. That's probably why they have those high pick rates. Guardian Roll, I've literally only taken once out of desperation. I needed AoE for Reptimancer. Hardened, 0 out of 20. Just like Crystal Ray, really bad pick rate. Multi-Beam, another big one. This is, it's basically like Whirlwind on Ironclad. It seems a bit weak, but works very well as AoE when you have extra energy, and of course, when you need it if you need it, then it fills a niche it fills that niche very easily. So, pretty easy take. Also, it scales itself up if you can put it into Stasis, which is really cool. I really like that aspect of it. I hope it doesn't change. Orb Support. The one time I took it was a mistake. These are all pretty average pick rates. Prismatic Barrier and Prismatic Spire are just too hard to take, in my opinion. Refracted Beam is a weaker Walker Claw unless you get upgrades on it. So I really only take it if I need the multi-attack of some kind, or if it already has an upgrade, which is actually down here somewhere. Refracted Beam plus X. Oh, I've never taken it, you say? Wait. Aha! Okay, so it checks the text specifically, and I copied this from Card Win Rates. But yeah, I've taken this one time out of the 6 times it was offered. Still not the greatest, even at 5 times attack. So yeah, Walker Claw can basically do anything it does, but better, unless you are like really desperate for some kind of big one-shot multi-attack. I don't know. I feel like it needs a change of some kind in order to be really useful. I like the idea of an infinitely upgradable multi-attack. I just don't think this is the way. In fact, I think you could even buff the base numbers. It doesn't have to be like Searing Blow. Not at all. It doesn't even scale not multiplicatively. It doesn't scale quadratically like Searing Blow does. You get +4, then +5, then +6, then +7 on every upgrade. This is the same amount of damage. The fact that it's a multi-hit makes it multiplicative against whatever strength you have, but I don't think it warrants a base damage like it has. I think it could even be like Riddle with Hulse. I think it could start at ×5. No, maybe that defeats the purpose. I don't know. So I hope this gets a change. That's all I have to say. Repulsor, super high pick rate. And 11 out of 19. I always take this if I can afford it. It's really useful for Act 4. I've said this before, but like Guardian has limited card draw that at least I want to take. So having draw consistency with Repulsor is really, really nice. By getting rid of bad cards that get added to the deck. Also, there is a 3 in 5 chance of fighting Hermit in any particular game. If you get it in Act 1, that's 100%, which, you know, adds more curses in Act 4 Neophyte. But even if you don't see it in Act 1, there's still a 50% chance for the rest of the game. So, you know, taking this is really, really good, just to have that contingency. And again, you can usually have a dead card in most fights. Repulsor is definitely the one I would want to have. Resilient Blade, I am shocked to see at this high of a pick rate. Very shocked. I don't know how this happened. Let's actually take a look here. Let's search Resilient Plate. And I'm going to look specifically in specific range, card rewards. Let's see. Okay, first take was episode 5. I don't remember why. I skipped a +1? Interesting. Took an early Resilient Plate to go with the roll attack. That makes sense. Resilient Plate plus. I don't know if I'm going to find anything by doing this. It's probably the brace numbers, to be honest. Because I don't think the temp buff scaling has happened very often. Although I guess the times where it has, it's been, you know, it reduces debuffs by 2, so that's really useful. I don't know. Maybe it's just a low sample size that's causing this. Who knows? Sentry Blast has just been very situational. Shield Spikes. Shield Spikes is interesting to have at such a high pick rate. I think I might overvalue it. It's worse than Flame Barrier. It doesn't ever feel good to take as a card. It's just sort of something that I have to take, I think. It feels really bad in the late game. I guess it feels okay in the early game, which is why I take it so often. It's also good in Act 2 when block is really needed. That's probably why it's such a high pick rate. Also, the Brace Aid is useful for late game, I guess. The one redeeming factor. I've taken Time Bomb once. Interesting. Was that in? That was in the 11th episode, I think. Let's take a look. Skip that one. Skip that one. I took it in episode 1. Interesting. That must have been. I think that was because of a toxic egg, and I needed some kind of AoE. And that was a long time ago. That makes sense though. If I needed the AoE and it was first episode, that episode got very, very strong very fast with Dead Branch and Toxic Egg and all that stuff. Snecko Eye, yeah. Snecko Eye especially makes sense with Time Bomb. Time Capacitor, I've actually taken this more times than I thought I would have. I guess 5 out of 20 runs is not that unreasonable. Because that sounds about right for the number of times that you would want extra stasis slots. I just don't remember taking it that many times. Interesting. The gems, Amber. I actually take this quite often, apparently. Makes sense. It's not particularly strong, but it can lead to some good combos, which I think makes it valuable. Amethyst I don't take as often as I thought, but I guess it makes sense. Really, the only times it's good is when it's in Twin Slam or Bubble Burst, so I try to take it exclusively in those times. It's only 2 block on its own, which doesn't really compare to Aquamarine, which is a common. It blocks for 3 or 4, or even more if you have other sorts of dexterity. The extra 1 dexterity comes from the Broken Green Key. So Amethyst doesn't get that kind of scaling. So I put it into Twin Slam or Bubble Burst to multiply its effect. That way, at its worst, it still blocks for a decent amount. It blocks for 4, sometimes 6, or sometimes 8. And at its best, it does amazingly. Can negate an entire turn's worth of damage by itself, or at least enough for it to be justifiable. So, yeah, situational. Never taken Fragmented Gem. I've explained before that counter to Aquamarine, there's not really a situation where you're in need of extra damage to socket in cards that you can't just take from some other card. Like Walker Claw can do everything that Fragmented Gem does, or everything that you would want Fragmented Gem for, except for, like, I guess, Stasis Engine, a couple niche interactions that interact just directly with what a ship is. Like 0-cost card that exhausts, that's like Dead Branch, Stasis Engine. I guess if you want gems, you can have an unsocketed gem for Stasis Engine too. I guess it's okay if you're in the late game and you have an open slot, or if you have Gem Cannon. So yeah, it doesn't do anything special by itself. I explained this more in the tier list video. Garnet happens pretty often, that seems about right. Garnet is another one that kind of just goes into Twin Slam or Bubble Burst. But I've even taken it a couple times unsocketed and it's been okay, so, you know. Quartz, if there's nothing better in the card reward, I take it because it's completely free, with a couple niche exceptions. So, you know, Sapphire, I think I've taken this one too many times. 1 time out of 21 sounds about right. I think the one time I took it, I socketed into a 3 brace card, made it 6 brace. Turns out that's still not very much better. 6 brace is still below a useful threshold. Anyways, onto the rares. Ancient Construct I've never taken. I'm sure there's a situation where I will eventually take it, but that hasn't happened yet. 3 cost is just too much. I would like it to be 2 cost. I think it would be fair for temp buff scaling. Because usually either the temp buffs are enough, or you have permanent buffs like the 3 strength cards that Construction Form charge up or block, or you have debuff down cards like Resilient Plate, Onyx, Ancient Power Plus. So Ancient Construct's kind of hard to justify. Bobble Burst, I've taken it 50% of the time. That makes sense. The multiplied gem effects is really, really powerful. Yeah, compile package. higher pick rate. I guess because Bubble Burst requires investment. Meanwhile, Compile Package just adds raw value to a deck. In Act 1, at the end of Act 1, at the Act 1 boss reward, that's perfect, usually. gives you exactly the kind of thing you need to survive Act 2, and maybe, yeah, and maybe push your deck further a bit. Construction Form is even more so. I've taken them both the same number of times. Construction Form has just been offered less. I think this is still accurate compared to Compile Package. I would definitely take Construction Form over Compile Package, I think pretty much every time. Exploit Gems I've taken a lot more times than I've thought, but I guess that's just because of the fact that it's just like Quartz, it's free. It's just that most rare cards are better, and that's usually where it's going to show up as the rare card reward. A do-nothing card that requires gems and has a very low impact. It being a draw 1 is okay, just for 0 energy, and you get the gems for free. It's fine, but it's not anything special. Fierce Bash is trash. Gem Cannon. Yeah, I have this as an S tier card, but recently I haven't been taking as many gems in my deck. I wonder if that's been a luck thing, because I remember before this series started, I took a lot more gems than what has been happening recently. And Gem Cannon has carried so many runs. You get that at the end of Act 1, you just destroy Act 2. Yeah. And sometimes even Act 3 if you lean into it. So yeah, I don't know why this is so low. I think we'll just have to keep playing through these games, and eventually we'll get somewhere. Of course, this could, like I said, this could just be a fact of the low sample size. We'll have to see. Gem Finder, I think I've taken more times than was actually useful, but we'll have to see how that unfolds. Unfolds was the word I was thinking of. Giga Beam, we have not been offered that very much, have we? I guess it's been coming with Compile Package more often, but this is a really good card. I think this pick rate will, increase over time. Or maybe 37.5% is good. No, I'm expecting it to be over 40%, or around 40%. Let's say 41. Let's make an estimate that that's 41 by the end of the series. Laser Turret, solid card, just not very many opportunities for it to be good. I either usually have already the Stasis, or there's a better rare card, so I think this will go up eventually. Revenge Protocol is great for the 5 brace. I think this makes sense, although maybe I overvalue it a bit. It doesn't do anything the turn you play it, or maybe even multiple turns. Speed Boost is really situational. Spheric Shield, I've taken this 100% of the time out of the 6 times. This is kind of like Impervious on Ironclad, not just directly, but also because of the use case. Big block card with very little conditions attached to it is just very good in Slay the Spire. It is basically a panic button. You hit it once, it goes away for the rest of the fight, and you're safe for 1 turn. And at 2 energy cost, that means you'll still have at least 1 energy to do something else with the turn. Maybe you play a key power, maybe you play, maybe you dump your strength into a 1-cost polybeam or something. Yeah. Also, putting you into defensive means that any leftover block carries to the next turn. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah. I think this pick rate's going to remain super, super high. Over 50%, maybe even over 2/3. But yeah. Stasis Engine, is actually feeling a lot more situational than I thought it would. I definitely remember it being better before the series started, but that may have been a thing because of the extra gems I was taking, just like with Gem Cannon. Recently, and I've said this recently as well, the 2 cost on Stasis Engine, I've really been feeling that. It's felt very costly, I guess is the best word. Stasis Engine has been very rather difficult to put into play effectively. The benefit it gives is good. It just doesn't feel as bad. It doesn't feel good enough to counter how bad the 2 cost has felt recently. So I expect this pick rate to go down. Stasis Field, I'm gonna still have to learn more about this, so I think this will stay high. Stasis Strike, it gives you more stasis slots. I like the card. It's a 9 damage card for 1 energy. It's a good Act 1 card. That's usually why I like these kinds of cards. Anyways, Time Sifter I've taken twice. Wow. was probably 2 more times than I needed to take it, huh? This thing has showed up so often. It's funny. And Citrine, just love this card. One of my favorite cards. Citrine is just so fun to make work in whatever card you put it in. I have actually noticed that it feels kind of bad in roll attack, making it 1 cost, because like you're not really gaining energy at that point. You're just making it a 1 cost brace 8 for 16, which is above average as a card, but you can probably do that by the end game with whatever you have already. So I'd rather have a way to make a card free completely with the Citrine or generate energy. It's not bad. It's just a lesson, I think, that it shouldn't go in roll attack unless you have no other option. But even at its worst, it's not bad. And Onyx I've only taken once. I've had some suggestions I should take it more often. I expect this pick rate to go up. I do think I undervalue the Onyx a little bit. Because, temp buff scaling is only 1/2 of the debuff down thing. You also get to reduce actual debuffs that enemies give you. That's very powerful. And of course, if you have multiple temporary buffs at the same time, you get to cleanse all of them at once, which I'm learning slowly is actually very effective. One of my recent runs, actually. Which was it? Was it this one? Ancient Power, Resilient Plate. Yeah, it was actually this one where a lot of the temporary buffs I was able to keep with the Resilient Plates, Overload Plus, and all that stuff, even though I didn't really need to. I did notice that I was scaling up very fast because I was cleansing multiple debuffs at the same time. So yeah, I'm not really going to go over these upgraded cards. I don't think they're worth doing. Except Shield Charger, I guess. This is going to have a really, really high pick rate. Yeah, the sample size is just too low on all these. Maybe over time they'll get higher. Also, I wanted to address why this is separate, why the upgrade cards are separate. It makes sense to me. I originally saw it in some other place. I saw some other games pick rates, or not some other games. I either saw Downfall's pick rates at some point or base game STS's pick rates at some point, and they had the upgraded cards separated because they make big differences. The card itself, it may be useful to combine the upgraded and the unupgraded versions together. But it is also useful to keep them separate, so I have them like that. Also, you don't really need to have them combined like that. You can just kind of eyeball it. You can say, oh, both of these have high pick rates, they're probably good cards. Oh, the upgraded version has a high pick rate, but the other doesn't. The base version is probably too low, or whatever. Also, right before we stop here, I'm gonna just make a quick filter. Yeah, okay. So the only really useful way I can see to sort this is by number taken. Actually, let me do this in the opposite order. Because that has like a healthy combination of ratio to how many offered versus the high pick rate. So if you want to take a look at like the highest, like the most powerful cards, this is probably the way to do it. Actually, it's not that useful, is it? Yeah, we really need some extra statistics here. I just sort A to Z. Okay, now we're back to normal. So yeah, these don't really sort well. My bad. But hopefully we'll get some extra statistics here to actually get some extra useful information from these. If you want to see anything additional about this sheet, such as relic win rates, card win rates, the link will be in the description to the public version of the spreadsheet, and you can take a look for yourself. Also, I will see you in the next video, which will be the bonus video. It will be a special run of Guardian, not in the base game format. It will be something different. Admittedly, not necessarily something relevant to the series, just something fun I wanted to do as an addition to this, because I did the tier list last time. We'll see how the future ones do. What would we do for the future ones, but for now, I'll just see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.